So in this lesson we want to look at the surface area of pyramids and cones. And as we know from the past, the surface area is the sum of the area of all surfaces of a three-dimensional object. For prisms and pyramids, you find the area of each face of the object and add them together. And then the same thing with a cone or a cylinder. In this case we're talking about cones. You're going to add the area of the two surfaces. Now in a cone there are essentially two different surfaces you can get. There is the base, which is a circle, the radius of r. So that part of the surface area would be the area of a circle, pi r squared. And the side part, the lateral as we call it, is or has an area of pi times radius times s, where s is the slant height, which is right here. Not to be confused with the height at 90 degrees to the object, which is h. Alright, so let's take a look at an example involving a cone. First of all, a straightforward one where you're just calculating the surface area. Find the surface area with radius 4 and height, which is the vertical height because slant isn't mentioned in it, height of 10. Alright, so we pull out our formula. Surface area is pi r squared plus pi rs. And we can see from the diagram that the radius is 4, but what we have is the vertical height. What we need is the slant height, s. So what we can use is the formula for Pythagoras, where we know that the leg squared plus the leg squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared. And so that's 100 plus 16, which is s squared. Therefore, s squared is 116, making s the square root of 116. Alright, and then we can go and do our surface area calculation. From this point, our surface area is going to be pi times 4 squared plus pi times 4 times the square root of 116. Now it's good to work with the radicals and the pi as they are until the end, and then just do one grand typing in of the expression into the calculator. So what do I have here? 4 squared, I have 16 pi plus 4 root 116 times pi. And so we're going to go 16 multiplied by the pi button plus 4 times 116 square root. In your calculator you might enter the square root before the 116, so you have to look at what type of calculator you have, times pi equals, and we're rounding this off to 2 decimal places, so we have 185.61 and the units would be meters squared. Our next example, we're told that the lateral surface area, now the lateral is just the side, it does not include, we're not talking about this section here, just the side. So the surface area we're talking about here is pi rs, we're not talking about the circle at the bottom, so we're not going to use that part of the formula in this case. We're told that the surface area is 220. We're told that the diameter is 10, so all the way across is 10, making the radius, half of that, 5. And what we want to know is the height of the object. What would h be? Alright, well we're forced to work with the surface area formula pi rs, so what it looks like is going to happen is we're going to have to calculate s, and then from there s, which is right here, and then from there use Pythagoras once again to work backwards towards h. So plugging into my formula, I have 220 equals pi times 5 times s. So that's 220 equals 5 pi s. Alright, I need to solve for s. And since these things are all multiplied together, I'm going to divide both sides by 5 pi. And I'm going to get a decimal approximation for s. I got to remember that when I type in 220 divided by 5 pi, it's the 5 pi that's all being divided by 220. So I'd have to go 220 divided by bracket 5 times pi, close the bracket, and that's going to equal 14.00 and a bit. So I'm going to keep track of that number up above. And the units are centimeters. Alright, so now I can go off and calculate the height, because I know that r squared plus h squared is equal to s squared. I know the radius is 5. I don't know h, that's what I'm calculating. And I know that s is this 14.00 number squared. Alright, let's rearrange the formula for h to get h by itself. So h squared is going to be 14.00 and a bit squared minus 5 squared, and then I'm going to square root all of that. Alright, and now I'm ready to calculate out what that's going to be. So I've got to start with 14 and a bit squared, which is already in my calculator. I'm going to square that number. I'm going to take away 25, get my result, and I'm going to square root that result, 13.08 centimeters is the vertical height of the cone. Final example, I'm going to look at a pyramid. Now this is a triangular pyramid in which we have all congruent equilateral triangles. And we actually call this, when all the sides are congruent, we call this a tetrahedron. So in this tetrahedron, we have side lengths are 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of these faces. Let's take this one. Let's just draw it here. And I'm going to find the area of one of them. So the area of a triangle we know is 1/2 base times height. The base is 5. Now the height we know is always at 90 degrees, so the height would be here. Well, we don't know that, so we're going to have to figure that out. And because we've got a right triangle here, we've got a little right triangle within the main triangle, we can use Pythagoras to calculate height. Alright, now because it's equilateral, we know that this height is actually splitting this into 2 equal parts. So if I look at the right triangle that I'm narrowing in on, I can calculate h by Pythagoras. The hypotenuse squared equals h squared plus 2.5 squared. Okay, you've done Pythagoras many times, so feel free to just rearrange this do a few steps at once if you wish. So that's going to be 5 squared minus 2.5 squared, and because I didn't put the square on the other side, I'm square rooting. We've got 25 take away 2.5 squared, which is 18.75. is the height. Therefore, the area of one surface is 1/2 a base of 5 and a height of root 18.75. And therefore, the area of 4 surfaces, which make up this tetrahedron, would be 4 times all of that. Notice that I'm working without the calculator primarily throughout this, just for ease of use. 4 times 1/2 is going to be 2, times 5 is going to be 10. So it's going to be 10 times 18 root 75. And now I'm going to go off to my calculator. I'm going to type that in. 10 multiplied by 18.75 square root equals 43.30 meters squared is my surface area.